Yep. Hello, everyone. Jason Crawford here, and welcome to WP Roundtable with another great guest today. But I'm not going to take the time. Kellen, you want to go ahead?
I do. Good evening, everybody. My name is Kellen, web developer from the fine state of Michigan. Happy to be on tonight with a great guest, Kyle.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Kyle. I'm from Michigan, too, and I do stuff with WordPress. And today we've got a really, really awesome guest on the show. I'm really, really excited to have Ben Lobaugh with us. Ben is a lead developer over WebDev Studios. He's an awesome member of the WordPress community. It's somebody that I've watched speak at WordCamps and been totally inspired and educated by. He's just one of the coolest guys that I've ever gotten a chance to meet out there at WordCamps, and just knows so much. It's just a nice, cool person. So excited that he took the time out of his evening to join us on the show today, and we're going to get to learn a whole lot about him. So Ben, why don't you do a quick introduction of who you are and what you do, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, Kyle, you flatter me, man. I didn't know that I was going to have to pay you at the end of this show.
Right.
It'll be cheap.
You're a bit cheap. All right, good. I don't have much. So I'm a lead developer over at WebDev Studios, which is based in Pennsylvania, but I am actually on the West Coast in Seattle, hanging out over here. I live on a boat. That's pretty awesome. I think we'll dive into that a little bit later for you guys. And recently came off the Jetpack team at Automattic, so that's me. Pretty simple.
It's pretty exciting, Ben. All right, before we dive into the questions and learn all about you and your illustrious career and your very interesting life, we're going to move on to our quick picks of the week. We're going to move through the roundtable. I'm going to start. I'm going to tell you my pick of the week is a cool article that I just read recently that was published by a former guest of ours on the show and a good friend, Rebecca Gill, on her blog over at websavvymarketing.com. And we will post a link in the show notes for sure, but it's an article that Rebecca wrote about her business's new strategic partnership with Crowd Favorite, which is a big WordPress agency. And Web Savvy Marketing is going to be partnering with Crowd Favorite to provide SEO services to their bigger clients. So it's pretty cool. It's cool to see that Rebecca and her business are doing well and partnering with this big agency. And I love seeing all these interesting partnerships and things happening in the WordPress space. So read that article and just check out what's going on. So Jason? Or Kellen?
Is he frozen? Maybe he's frozen. I will dive in that case. My plugin for the week is a jQuery plugin called Data Tables. I think it's fairly well known, but I hadn't used it previously. So for a project I was working on, I needed just some HTML tables, but I needed them more dynamic, so they could be automatically sorted by any column on the fly, and also some searching and stuff like that. So I thought I was going to have to put a little more work into it, building something from scratch, but it was simple as one line of code to initialize it, and then I was all set. Datatables.net is the site where the plugin lives, and it's really easy to get up and running to add pagination and filtering by any, or sorting, I should say, by any column, and a search that just scales the results down on the fly using some Ajax trickery. So highly recommended. Helped me out this week.
Thanks, Kellen. Ben, do you have something?
Hey, Data Tables is actually pretty cool. I used that on a project a while back.
Nice.
Good pick. My pick is actually J-Trip, who everybody knows and loves from the BuddyPress and the BBPress development. He has a Indiegogo campaign right now where he is actually trying to crowd fund himself for, I believe, 6 months to just work solely full-time on BuddyPress and BBPress. He has a goal of $50,000 on that, and he is currently $43,601 towards his goal with 17 days left. And there's some so big contributions. I believe it was Envato gave about 10 grand on that. So it's pretty exciting to see this going on and being able to, this is really a volunteer community and everything, and jumping in and seeing how cool it is that the whole community wants to support such an awesome developer, an awesome guy, full time on BuddyPress.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Ben, and that's so cool. And actually, I love that you picked that because, coincidentally enough, J-Trip himself will be our guest in a couple weeks. He's going to be on episode 35 of the Roundtable to come and talk about that specifically. So if you're interested in learning more about that, come check out episode 35 on December 8th. John's going to come and talk with us then. So thanks for sharing that. All right. So we temporarily lost Jason, so he's going to miss out on sharing his quick pick of the week. Maybe he'll drop it in the show notes for us. But for now, we are going to dive right into learning more about Ben Lobaugh, which is why people are here. All right, Ben. So we want to start at the beginning. We want to learn more about you. So let's go back a little bit and kind of set the stage by learning more about what you were doing before the web and before your career was started, and like, what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a kid, and how did you first get started professionally?
Oh, geez. All right. Going way, way back. So I actually grew up in a very small town, about 4,000 people. And not only that, I grew up 20 minutes outside of that town in the country. So when I was a kid, I was always outside, playing in the forest. In fact, I remember my grandparents bought me a Nintendo, the original Nintendo, still have the deck. And I never played it because I was always outside in the forest. And my parents used to say, hey, we don't want to see you until dinner time. You're making us crazy. So I'd go outside and build forts and stuff. So actually, I thought I was going to be a forest ranger because I love being outside. I love hiking, and so going into computers was kind of a different idea. Totally changed my life.
Okay. So what got you started professionally when you when you first got started and got on that career path and didn't end up becoming a park ranger, as I understand? How did that path unfold?
So this is kind of a fun story. In '95, my parents got their first computer, and it was just a PC, Windows 95 fresh on it, and I didn't really care about it too much, but somebody, I think one of my dad's friends, got me a subscription to PC Magazine. I was like, oh, this is cool. I don't know if you guys remember the shareware CDs. Came with this CD full of, I don't know, 200 or 500 or some little software applications that you could install. And one of them was called Hot Dog HTML Editor. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but old school. And it had a little tutorial in it on how to build websites, how to build HTML. And I had no idea what the internet was at this point. I don't think we got internet for the next 4 or 5 years. And I just started going through the tutorials, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I can build something that does stuff. And it turns out that by the time I learned what the internet was, that I had a really good skill set, and people just started having me build little websites for, I remember one of my friends, he had a Pokemon set, if you guys remember back in the days of Pokemon, to show off all of his collection. And so that's kind of how I got into the computer stuff and into the internet, building websites.
Wow, that's really interesting. So before you got into WordPress and stuff, you had kind of a variety of jobs in technology and doing a few things. Maybe talk just a little bit about some of the companies you worked for and the type of work you did before you got really into WordPress and serious web dev.
Sure. So my first legitimate computer job was actually IT at my high school, where I ran the whole networking system and did the typical, let's install OS X and let's use the spray bottles and spray out all the dust bunnies and whatnot. But from there, I got on with, I actually just started building stuff because I thought it was cool, found PHP and started doing databases. And I was part of a Linux group back then, still am part of it actually since 1998. And we wanted to do some sort of registry thing so we could be able to get a hold of each other easily. And I found PHP and MySQL and I started messing around with it. And then I don't know, it was just kind of this thing that naturally progressed. I don't really remember the first projects that I worked on or the first companies, but I do know my first legitimate full-time web development job was for a veterinary service down in California, and I lived up in Washington still, so I got to do some remote work when I was, I want to say 17 or 18 or something like that. And so that was really fun, but then from there it's been all over the place. I've worked at little mom and pop shops helping them get set up with just a digital presence. all the way up to international corporations. One of them, which was owned by the State Department, and was in, I believe, 25 different countries or something like that. And so it's been all over the map. And then I was actually at Microsoft Open Technologies for a while, and that was really cool. Never ever thought I'd work at Microsoft, because I was always Linux and open source based. But in that position, I was actually helping out the entire open source community. So if you guys know of Windows Azure, it's kind of their offering competitor to Amazon. And so I got tasked on that with trying to get it to work with open source, getting PHP running on it, and I got to actually manage a bunch of the projects going into that. So the reason why WordPress and PHP and any of those open source frameworks works on Azure right now is the direct result of some of the projects I was doing there. And that was really super fun. And from that, I hopped over to Automattic, and you guys kind of know the rest from there.
That's very awesome, Ben. Very cool. Next, we wanted to talk about what brought you into WordPress. You said we know the rest from there, but how about in a little more detail? I heard something about trying to create some custom CMSs on your own, and then seeing the light and discovering WordPress. Tell us about that.
All right, so we can back up a little bit there then. So yeah, I used to build fully custom solutions for everybody. Whether you're a mom and pop shop and you just needed literally like 3 pages to tell about yourself, or all the way up to that large corporation I was telling you about, which was a full-blown, crazy, complex application. And I was doing them all custom. And then I got to the point where I was trying to target more specific, smaller clients. And I realized, oh, they just need some pages and a newsletter. And that's when I found out, oh yeah, WordPress is actually this is perfect for this. And that was before like custom post types and all that came out, and I started switching everyone over. And then once custom post types came out, it became easy to really use it as a content management for anything at all. That's when I finally realized, okay, I'm not doing any more custom CMSs because it's just too much work to think about all the little gotchas and all the little bugs and taking care of all that. And that's when I fully switched over to WordPress.
That's awesome. It sounds really similar to Topher DeRoja, who's a previous guest on the show. He had a similar story where he's been, in the web since its inception, just about, and he was kind of rolling his own CMSs for a while. Looked at WordPress once and thought, it's okay. I like my stuff better. And then a little while went by, and it progressed quite a bit. And he looked at it again and thought, I need to stop my own. And this has gained so much momentum. It's such a powerful tool, and they switched over to it. So it sounds somewhat reminiscent of your experience.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Topher's an amazing guy, so if I'm following in his footsteps, I know I'm doing something right.
I like Topher a lot too. Yeah. I was thinking also when you dove into talking about your job with Microsoft as well. I happen to know recently WebDev did a site for, I think it was the Microsoft Office blogs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool. Yeah. Yeah. So to me, it's another example of how when I think Microsoft, I think their technologies, .NET and ASP and all that kind of stuff, and not so much of the open source stuff. But I think it's important to remember some of their stuff is, open source, just like that recent project that you guys did for them, right?
Yeah, sure. So Microsoft's actually had a long history with Microsoft's, or with WordPress, I mean. I don't know if you guys remember, but a long time ago, Microsoft used to host their own blogging system, and I don't know what the reasons were, but they decided they didn't want to do it anymore. They actually transitioned all of their blogs over to WordPress.com. And so then it became all WordPress based. And then that was years before I went to Microsoft. But when I came into Microsoft, people were still thinking, oh, WordPress is just this blogging platform. It's not a big deal. So I tried really hard to evangelize it in there. And slowly it started kicking off. And Open Technologies, they started using it for their website. And people saw that, oh, wow, this is legitimate. So while I was still at Automattic, they had pinged me and said, hey, do you know anybody who does this stuff, who could build a site to see if we like it? And it was for Office. And so I gave them 3 names, and WebDev Studios was one of them. So it's kind of like full circle, almost. Like I helped them there, and now I'm back working with the Microsoft crew again. They're actually really fun to work with, and they're loving open source over there. So it's really, really awesome.
Very cool.
So you mentioned when you were working for Automattic. Can you tell us a little bit about that, how you got started there, and what that was like?
Sure. Well, I was still at Microsoft Open Technologies at that point, and just like a dozen or more of the automaticians over there, they kept pinging me saying, "Hey, you should apply, you should apply." And I really liked what I was doing at OpenTech because it gave me the ability to impact the entire open source community for good. But just the lifestyle that Automattic affords, you can work from anywhere in the world. You set your own schedule. The teams are really flexible, and you get to travel to pretty much any WordCamp you want if you're working there in some way of speaking, which I enjoy speaking. So I finally said, sure, why not? Let's do this. And so I applied, and the application process it's pretty long over there. But I eventually told them, hey guys, it's taking a long time, so let's get this. Am I going to get a job? And they said, oh sure, we'll hire you. And then they put me on the Jetpack team, which is, everybody knows Jetpack, and it was a pretty fun project. It's big, and it's complex, but it was really fun working with an all-star team over there and on a big product that like I'd never done before.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. So what kind of responsibilities did you have when you were working on the Jetpack plugin itself?
So the way that Automattic works is it's a pretty flat structure. So my primary duties was being a developer on Jetpack, but then inside of that, we kind of put together ad hoc team structures. So we might have, this release, I'm being the manager of it, and so I'm, monitoring what's going in there and kind of set the roadmap. But then, some other time, somebody else on the team could be that, or even little individual projects. So Jetpack is, it's two-sided. There's the client side and there's the server side. So we had, sometimes somebody would go lead over there, and sometimes it was on the client. So there was just a various range of things that you could do in there, and I just held a bunch of little fun positions. It was great because it was a big enough project that you could move around and you were never really stuck on one thing. So I like changing things up a little bit and not getting stuck in that rut of this is the one thing that I do and this is the only thing that I do. But also there's more flexibility over there, and you can go out into the community if you want. You can go talk at WordCamps, and they sponsor all that stuff for you. And that so it's like the two-pronged thing. You're working on products, and you get to go do community involvement. And that to me is just so fun. I mean, as a couple of you guys have seen me at WordCamps, and I enjoy it a lot.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's really.
Sorry, Kyle. I was going to ask, were you here at Automattic working on the Jetpack team? Were you there at the same time as Scott Birkin, or no?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay.
I started just a few months after he left. I do know Scott, though. He's from Seattle. So I've actually hung out with him before Automattic, during Automattic, and after Automattic even. I actually went to his book launch party of the Year Without Pants.
Oh, nice.
And
cool.
he was,
yeah, that's why I asked.
Scott was a former Microsoft employee himself as well, who went to Automattic just like you.
Yeah, interestingly, everyone laments about Internet Explorer, and Scott Birkin was on the Internet Explorer team as one of the product managers over there.
Right.
But that was back in a different time.
Yeah, it was. And he talks about that in the book too. So if anyone's interested, you should definitely get it. It's an interesting read.
It is. I definitely agree. Yes. So you worked at Automattic for a little while before moving on to your current position, which we'll talk about in a sec. But we've had a few other automaticians on the show before, talking to Dustin Hartzler, Sherry Bigelow, and Jerry Bates, and just learning about the interesting life of a remote worker or working for Automattic or on the doing all this WordPress stuff. So we'd love to hear your take on like some of the best and worst parts of the job. As you've especially, I'd love to hear it from you because you've had a variety of working environments. You've worked in remote positions and non-remote positions in technology and for different agencies. And I don't know if you read J-Trip's article recently about distributed work.
Yes.
He wrote a blog article talking about some of the challenges of being a remote worker. And so I'd just be interested in hearing kind of your take on like the good and the bad of working in a remote company.
I think the good is also kind of the bad. The working remotely, and being able to set your own schedule is absolutely fantastic. I mean, I did so much traveling, and in fact, there are automaticians that they don't have an apartment anywhere, they don't have a home anywhere, they just travel, they go somewhere, and they look up on Airbnb, and they find a place to stay, and when they're tired of being there, they get on Airbnb and go somewhere else. So that I was able to travel a lot, see a lot of friends that have moved around the country. I even was able to travel over to Europe one time, and that was really cool. And just the ability to work anywhere, and knowing that there's not that traditional 9 to 5 schedule, because the company is spread out all over the world. So there's somebody working at all times, and that was really, really neat to be able to do that. But I also think that is also kind of the difficulty, because you set your own schedule, so somebody might not be awake or online or working when you need to talk to them. I mean, usually you can work around that pretty easy, but that can be frustrating at sometimes. And also, I used to be the kind of person who was always very punctual. I was always 15 minutes early everywhere, and not having a schedule kind of got me out of that. So now I'm late all the time. Like, I was almost late tonight. So you got to be a lot more on top of your game. Otherwise, you can kind of lose track of that. And then the working remotely part, like, it's great. Like, I've been on IRC since 1999, interacting with people on open source projects. So I love being able to work remotely from anywhere. But at the same time, like, when you're sitting in an office environment, like when I was at Microsoft, I had my coworkers right there or down the hall or whatever, to where if I had an idea, I just walk down there and have a face-to-face conversation with them, and you can see their body language and their facial expressions, how they're interacting with you, and you get a lot from that. So while working remotely is amazing, sometimes it's really nice to be able to just pop over and bounce an idea off somebody. So yeah, the good and the bad I kind of think is the same thing. I highly recommend, if you get an opportunity to work remotely, to definitely try it. It's not for everybody. Some people can't handle working alone. Some people can. I tend to really enjoy it.
That's a good answer. I appreciate that. So you have moved on at this point to another distributed company at this time, which is WebDev Studios. And we've already had a couple other people from the company before on the show. Brad Parbs was on the show a while back, as was Brian Richards, who is a former WebDev Studios employee. And we've had a couple other WebDev members who are on the upcoming calendar and will be joining us in the future. So you guys have a pretty elite team. As far as I see it. WebDev Studios is a bunch of rock stars doing awesome stuff. They're growing fast. So it's a big team compared to a lot of us smaller agencies, but it's much smaller than Automattic, obviously. So maybe contrast for us a little bit the difference between working for Automattic, or actually, even more interestingly, going from like Microsoft to Automattic to WebDev Studios. What's that like for you? What are the differences between these big, the huge, big, small companies?
Well, working for Microsoft was fun. There's about 90,000 employees there, so it's a little bit bigger than WebDev, which has, I think, 30 or 40 or some employees. But it was really cool. Microsoft, they have a huge campus out here, which is their primary campus, and it has its own shuttle system between the buildings, because the campus is, I don't know, like 100 acres or something. So when you got meetings, you gotta hop in the car. But there's also a lot of calls. So you do a lot of, even though you're sitting in an office, when you're interacting with other teams, you're still doing a lot of remote stuff. Just you're at your office, but you're calling in to all these conferences. And I also managed a lot of vendors there, so I was still doing a lot of similar things. I was just sitting in an office. So I don't feel like the switch from working in the office to working remotely was too big there. And I also had some control of my schedule too, which was pretty nice. And then working at Automattic, oh man, it was a total switch. It actually took me about a month to wrap my head around it, because at a big company like Microsoft, there's a lot of politics that go on, and there's a lot more legal things that you got to pay attention to, because obviously like it's so big, they got to protect their patents, and all their intellectual property and all that. So when you're doing projects, you got to get like your manager's approval and your manager's approval. Then you have to make sure the team's aware of everything. And then when I switched to Automattic, it was like, yeah, our motto is, do what you want. Ask forgiveness, not permission. If you break WordPress.com, which is our main site, running 70 million, it's okay, and all that stuff. And it kind of blew my mind for the first month that if I saw something that I thought needed fixed, I didn't have to go through a committee to get it done. I just went and did it, and and then deployed it to all of those millions of websites just right away. So that was really cool. It can get a little overwhelming at first. And then moving to WebDev, which is an even smaller team, I don't know. I like WebDev. You're right. There's some really, really awesome people at WebDev. And the bummer at WebDev is they have a more traditional style of a schedule. So I'm not loosey-goosey and free to wake up whenever I want and work whenever I want. Still get to work from wherever I want, though, which is nice. And then the team we have one person outside the United States, I believe, in the company, versus Microsoft and Automattic are all over the place. So I don't get to interact with as many cultures, but it's great. I've been really, really liking it there.
That's cool. And I was just noticing, just kind of researching you a little bit before the interview here on a few different places online. You have like Linux and Mac OS 10 listed as under your like specialties, or platforms you're familiar with. So I'm picturing you working for Microsoft using these other platforms. Like, were they cool with that, or is it totally frowned upon? Like, you have to hide your logos that may be on the outside of your computer or that kind of thing.
So when I first started at Microsoft, that was when Windows 7 was the big one, and I didn't know how to use it, and I hadn't used Microsoft Word since Office 97, I think. And
really?
He would say, "Oh yeah, just go do this for me real quick in Word," and I'd call him up and be like, I don't know how to do this. It's not them. What do I do? There's all these buttons. I don't know what they do. So that gave him quite a chuckle. When Windows 8 came out, oh man, I don't like Windows 8. It doesn't just flow in my brain,
Yeah.
So I said, forget this, and I started bringing my Mac. And so I wound up working full-time on my Mac before I quit there. And I think it was a little bit more accepted because I was on the OpenTech team, so I was supposed to be interacting with non-Microsoft products, so they didn't really care too much.
Okay.
Turns out it's pretty flexible over there. There's quite a few people that are running Macs now, and I mean they still prefer that you run their Windows products and whatnot. But I didn't really get any pushback. The worst one was we would do an all-team meeting, which was like 60 people, and we'd all sit in this big circle, and the guys kept threatening to put stuff over the Apple on my laptop.
Wow.
Is this they were threatening in jest, or it's like?
Oh yeah, no, it was all in good fun.
Serious. All right.
One of the guys, he used to work on Bing. He built the original API for Bing, and he actually came over to my computer a couple of times when I would turn around, be talking to the person next to me and not paying attention, and change my search engine from Google to Bing.
Oh really?
Yeah.
That's funny. Kyle and I live pretty close to the Detroit area, so especially myself, so I see a lot of cars on the road that, with the stickers in the back window, it's like, I work for Ford, I drive a Ford, my family drives Fords, or whatever. Like, you better not pull into work with a Chrysler or with a GM, know your brand and stick with your brand and don't use anything else. So I'm always curious about that with, in tech companies.
No, WordPress is, not WordPress, Microsoft was a really great place to work. It's super relaxed, big corporation, but it had like a small family feel to it.
That's very cool. Next, we wanted to ask you about related to go back to the web dev discussions. So numerous mergers, acquisitions, and acqui-hires, if that's even a word, have been taking place over WordPress in the last few years, including many by Automattic and also WebDev. As somebody who's been present for a number of these, tell us how they've impacted the companies you worked for and the work you do day to day in your current role.
All right. So at Automattic, not a lot of those acquisitions directly affected the Jetpack team. The one that did was the Brute Protect, which happened actually, I think, the same month that I left, transitioned out of there. So I didn't really get to experience direct in my product involvement, but as an overall company at Automattic, it just enabled us to provide much better services. And all the companies that we hired, Matt's a very smart person, and he finds products that he really likes, and those products are generally run by people with the same kind of vision and work styles and stuff as he has. So they integrated really easily and really quickly in the most cases, and just enabled us to provide across the board better. Like you guys might be familiar with CloudUp. It's like a paste bin for anything, like images, files, whatever you want. So it gave better tools really quickly and really easily. And with WebDev, we just hired acquired all that stuff, maintained, and that's actually really given us a big boost in the company, because we're a big development team, and doing maintenance contracts when you're constantly getting new clients and working on these new projects can sometimes be a little bit draining on the team, because all of a sudden you've got this 20, 30, 40 hours over here you got to go spend on this thing. When you're all excited about this new project and you want to roll it out and you've got big deadlines on that. So acquiring Maintain has really boosted the capabilities of what WebDev can do, because now we have our own dedicated team that we do our contracts with our clients, and then at the end when we move into maintenance mode, we can push it off to the Maintain group, and then they keep it rolling. They do all the updates, and if there's a big new phase 2, 3, whatever of development, it might pop back inside WebDev itself, and then we take it over again. But having Maintain there is really awesome, and it not only is it just products and projects that WebDev Studios has done, but it's also still available as a service for anybody else. So it's generating still its own source of income, and it's still being a benefit to the community as a whole. So
that's cool.
I think. No, go ahead.
Sorry, man. I was gonna say, I think I read that it was kind of cyclical too, right? The founder of Maintain was like a former WebDev employee, I think, and founded this other company, which has done pretty well, and now it's come full circle, and now that they've become a part of WebDev. Is that correct?
Yeah, Shane Sanderson. He's one of the founders. Yeah, he's a really great guy, and he was originally there. It's actually happened. Cool. A couple of employees there, even Brian Richards, he kind of left to do his own little project that he started on the side there. That is one of the cool things about WebDev Studios, is you're encouraged to go try to build things that you like, that fall outside of the scope of what WebDev Studios does. So Shane went off and he did this thing, and it was really awesome, and turns out that WebDev could utilize it, and so he got to come back into a group of people that he really likes, and we really like him. So it's been a great thing for WebDev to have Maintain, and it's also been really fun to have Shane and his crew back.
Yeah, he pulled a Steve Jobs, right?
Yeah, he did. Smart man. We should let him design all our products. Yeah. And you know what? In our weekly calls, he actually does wear black turtlenecks a lot.
I called it. There it is.
Wow.
So Ben, what got you involved in? How did you get involved into WebDev, and what brought you to that point and everything?
Sure. So, like you guys heard that when I was at Microsoft, I was managing a bunch of their projects, going into Azure and whatnot. And, I really like having a big overview and managing things and helping products get really good quality, and just overseeing everything. I really enjoy that part. I enjoy being a developer. I've done that for a long, long time, and so working on Jetpack, that was a lot of fun, but I was just a developer. And so Brad Williams, he had been bugging me for months, saying, "Hey, I want you to come and lead a team over here." And it just so happened that they were right in the middle of a big switch, and Brian Richards stepped out, and so I kind of filled his role, which is a big role to fill because he's a pretty awesome dude. And now I'm kind of back in the saddle, and I'm leading a bunch of client projects, and it's been really fun to step kind of back into that managerial role. That's really what got me excited about hopping in there in the first place.
Wow. So now, how does your responsibilities break down at this point? Are you doing a lot of development, or is it more of a project management role or managerial role, or a split between them?
So it's kind of split. So I interact with new clients, potential clients, to help scope documents with Brad or whoever's the executive on that project, to see if we can bring them in and onboard them. I also do a lot of the architecting and figuring out how things are going to be designed, and then working with the team to try to figure out, who's going to be working on what and how we can prioritize things. We actually do have our own project managers that kind of set the timelines and the goals for us, and then I kind of drive the projects from the development side. And I'm not really involved in too much product work yet, but hopefully we're going to be bringing on some more of that stuff. So it's mostly client projects right now. So it's significantly different than at Automattic, where I just had this one product that I work on. But it's been really fun, and I don't know, usually half of my day is a bunch of meetings and talking with clients, talking internal meetings and prepping things, and about half my day is tries to be development. It doesn't always get that way with, as I'm sure you guys that run your own shops are familiar with, sometimes you don't get much dev time in, but it's kind of split. So I still get the fun of developing, and I get the fun of being the big picture guy.
So another thing that I was thinking about is when I first met you, or was introduced to you to, or came across Ben Lobaugh, or the name started to, I started to remember the name Ben Lobaugh in my head. It was associated with all of my efforts to learn about APIs, especially as they relate to WordPress. And somehow, at least to me, you were the guy who came up. The guy gave talks about it at WordCamps, and the guy who wrote articles on it that were very helpful. And so I learned a lot about WP Remote Get and things of that nature from Ben Lobaugh. So you've become pretty proficient with things like that, and I think been involved in some interesting projects that have external APIs interacting with each other and stuff. So maybe tell us a little bit about your API-related work and what you've done, the cool projects especially.
Sure. Well, I always love it when I hear people say that they got something on my talks. Actually, at WordCamp San Francisco, I had a guy walk up to me, no idea who he was, and he was from Russia there, and he came up and said, "Hey, I watched this talk, and thank you so much. It inspired me to go to a WordCamp and speak." So it's just cool that you actually enjoy your talks and learn from them, But with the API stuff, so it'd probably been a couple of years that I'd been interacting with APIs and pulling data from them mostly. And you guys all know Meetup.com, I'm sure. And I actually wound up, the Seattle Meetup group, we wanted to pull some stuff from the Meetup API, so I started researching their clients and whatnot. And there's not actually an official, well, maybe there is now, I'm not sure, but back then there wasn't an official Meetup PHP client for their API. But they did have one listed on their page as a community contributed one. And so I hopped into that and I was like, man, this sucks. This is bad. So I wound up my own. Actually, I wrote it in a couple of hours, and it worked. And Meetup.com got a hold of it, and they started. Actually, their community manager called me and said, "Hey, this is really good, and it's really well documented and all this. We're doing a hackathon in New York, and we'd love to promote this. Is that okay?" I was like, sure. So kind of my proudest API moment, I think, is that Meetup.com API PHP client, which is still available, and I get pull requests on it occasionally, and Meetup I think they're still promoting it. And that's kind of how I got interested in pulling from APIs. And then a bunch of people around the Seattle area, a bunch of little startups started, I don't really know how they found me, but they started asking me, how can we set up APIs for our systems? And so I started doing some advising for local startups, and even helped build a few clients for them and helped build out some of their services. And then I started going to some API talks at WordCamps, just like you did, Kyle, and I didn't like them. I didn't like any of them because they weren't really how to utilize the features inside of WordPress to tap into the power of APIs. It was more like, let's toss this JavaScript thing in so you can use Stripe. Or simple little things like that. It was never really like in-depth, deep, advanced knowledge like I wanted. So I put together that talk, and a lot of it was actually based off of Brad Williams' WordPress plugins book. And I highly encourage everyone to get that book. That's like the best book on the planet. It taught me a ton.
It is awesome.
Yeah, so that's really where all those talks came from, is because I wanted to know better how to do stuff inside of WordPress because I was like, if I want to do this, somebody else has had to want to do this before. Yeah, there's a whole API and just nobody talks about it. So that got me on the bandwagon. I think I did that talk. It was really popular. I think I did it like 6 times that year in various places around the United States.
Wow, that's crazy. There's been a lot of talk lately about APIs as they pertain to WordPress. That's becoming a big discussion. Definitely, real big deal with the whole REST API coming out, and a lot of work on that. I know Matt talked about it in his State of the Word, and a lot of everybody's talking about it. This is a game changer. You know, this is a big deal. But at the same time, a lot of you might say the laity are not, at least I would say, understanding the significance or exactly what the possibilities are, or envisioning exactly how this could change things, what's going to come to be. So do you have any like predictions about this, or any ideas of what is going to open, or like tangible examples of like what you see is now going to start happening or be possible?
Well, I gotta say, I love this idea. So the XML RPCs existed for a long time, and you can do everything that the JSON API that's upcoming can do, but it's so complex, and you use these huge XML things, the files that you got to send back and forth. JSON, super simple, all REST-based, so I'm really excited for that to hopefully land in core soon. And obviously we know it's been something that's been really, really desired in the community for a long time. WordPress.com has their own API, their own REST API that's all JSON based, that actually you can tap into any non-WordPress.com site through Jetpack, and that's been incredibly popular because it allows developers to build full-blown apps that can tap into the database of whatever site they're using. And so we've seen examples of that, like in phone apps, to where you build the app that's native on the phone, but it's tapping into the database, so you can change things on the fly just through your, the very easy to use, well-known interface through WordPress. And I think that having it installed on all of the individual installs of WordPress is it's going to make things a lot easier to actually build platforms of databases off of WordPress. And I think we're going to see WordPress it's just going to blow up. We're at like 23% of the internet now, and I think it's going to be able to power just these massive, awesome frameworks that we can just dump data into and pull it from anywhere. So I think WordPress is going to become the de facto standard for just managing mountains of data as well through that. The one drawback that I see to it is people that go and scrape the web and put it on the websites. I've experienced people copying my data before, and it's kind of funny actually because they usually have some of your markup in it or shortcodes that do weird things. But this is even easier for them because they can just straight up pull your data, right? But I'm also interested to see how, all these are going to be available, so I'm interested to see how we can make WordPress sites intercommunicate with each other through this JSON API. Like, I don't know, Kyle, maybe someday my website and your website will talk about stuff. Maybe you leave a comment on my website with somebody else's at their handle, and it automatically reports onto their website. So I can see some really cool, interesting things coming from it. But I think it's definitely going to power a lot of just database storage and things. And maybe it'll even make us revisit how Core stores data in databases and make that more efficient and able to work with more platforms, like maybe MongoDB or some of these big data systems.
That's pretty interesting.
So I wanted to ask a few questions. I watched a bunch of your videos today, and so what? Can you give us like the laundry list of all the talks that you've given at WordCamp?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know. I'd have to go look myself. So most of my stuff is typically on advanced development concepts inside of WordPress, because I've been doing development for a long time, over 14 years now, and then really diving into WordPress hard because it's such an awesome and powerful tool. So I've never done a talk on caching because Zach Tolman is the caching god, and I do not know enough about it to do it. I just let him take that over. But I've done talks on the database and how to use WPTB, how to use WP Query, obviously the one on the APIs, and WordPress cron. That's a pretty unknown system too. It's starting to gain more traction and such. But I gave a talk a few years back that was pretty interesting. Gosh, I don't even know. I've done a lot of things. This year was the first time that I've given a non-developer talk, and it was entitled "How to Go from Zero to WordPress Hero." And that was really fun because it was not a developer talk. I stepped out on stage and I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen here, guys. So if this totally bombs, I'm sorry. And that was just basically, how to make a name for yourself in the community, how to get involved in that sort of thing. It's just kind of been all over the place, but it's all related to advanced sort of PHP concepts inside of WordPress.
Yeah, I actually watched that one. I enjoyed it quite a bit. How about maybe some pointers on things that you've improved? I noticed it kind of looked like you were controlling your screens from your phone there in some of the later ones. Maybe not. But maybe some tips on what you've learned over the time that's made you a better speaker or made you more comfortable speaking at WordCamps.
Well, I think the biggest key to learn is that even though you're up on stage, you don't have to be the expert. Like in every single talk I've ever given, somebody's asked me a question that I couldn't answer, and almost every single time there's been somebody in the crowd that could answer the question. And sometimes somebody like Nason's in the room. I think he was in the room for part of one of my talks before. J-Trip's been in the room for my talks. Just these big name people, and just knowing that you're up on stage and you have the knowledge and that you're imparting to the people, but somebody can ask you a question, you can reflect it back, and somebody can give you an answer. And it's really cool because they walk away feeling satisfied and loving your presentation because they got all their questions answered, and you didn't even have to do anything, right? You still get the credit because you're up front. So that's always fun. And just, I don't know, just being relaxed. There was something else that came to my brain as I was saying that, and then I completely lost it.
Yeah, public speaking is an interesting thing.
Yeah, here's one. Go to the bathroom at least 5 minutes before you get on stage. I have had that experience before where I failed and regretted it very much.
That's a funny one. I know I've learned to not drink coffee right before a talk, and maybe that's just me, but I'll come across as agitated or talking fast or this wrecks my talk, things like that. But I love public speaking too. It's something I'm very, very passionate about. And I've definitely enjoyed your talks and have been kind of inspired by them. You have a very natural way with an audience and a very warm and relatable demeanor, I think. So very effective.
I never really knew that I was going to enjoy speaking. At Microsoft, they started sending me around to conferences to speak, and I'd never done it before, but it turns out that I really enjoy teaching people and helping people reach their potential. And I have this feeling that a lot of us, we put limitations on ourselves because it's an unknown. So if I can help people unlock that unknown and the potential that's inside of them, it gives me the warm fuzzies. I enjoy doing that a lot.
All right.
Warm
Yeah.
fuzzies are good.
On the warm and fuzzies note, let's talk about Ben in another sense. What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? I feel like this is leading into a boat conversation. So for fun, I do live on a boat. Actually, a couple of years ago, I bought about 4 or 5 years ago now. I bought a sailboat, and nobody in my family's ever owned a boat. Didn't even live near the water. I had never been sailing before in my life, and I just thought, I think this is something I could enjoy. So I went out and bought myself a sailboat, and it turns out that I absolutely love it. Oh man, there is nothing better than after a stressful day going out on your boat, tossing up those sails. It's whisper quiet, and you get to, it's like a dance with nature almost. You got to figure out where's the wind coming from, what's the current like, how can I get from point A to point B, and it's the most, I call it intensely relaxing. I don't really know any other way to describe it, but that's really been the big thing that I do a lot. When I'm not working, that's kind of what I like to do. I love hiking and backpacking, but the sailboat's kind of trumped all of it in the past couple of years.
So recently you had a change of residence too, to the point that this boating thing was more than just something you want to do in your off hours. So this is a very recent development in your life, I think.
So I have this thing, I call it boateritis, where I just want more boats, and I like boats a lot. And my lease came up to end at my apartment complex, and I was like, you know what? I want to live on a boat. And so I went out and I found this cool boat. It's a power boat. It's not a sailboat, but it's a 77 Carver. It's 12 foot wide, 33 feet long, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. One of my buddies was actually looking at it to live on himself. And as soon as I walked onto it, I said, dude, I'm going to outbid you for this boat. I went to the boat. So it's been a little over a month that I've actually been a full-time living aboard a boat kind of person. And it's been really interesting. There's not a lot of space on a boat. So going from a large 1,000 square foot 2-bedroom apartment down to a 33-foot long boat that's not square, and having to learn to downsize my life and make it simple. It's been really interesting, and I'm enjoying it a lot. Learning that I don't actually need as much to live that I have been living with.
So interesting. I was telling somebody about that, and they were asking me like, what about in the winter? It's Seattle. Doesn't the water freeze or anything?
No, the water up here doesn't freeze. Because I'm right next to Puget Sound, it stays pretty temperate all the time. So it rarely gets down into the teens in Fahrenheit. And I mean, really, it's just like a house. It gets cold, you turn on the heater, and you're good to go. You do have the water, which is cold, and it's going to try to suck the heat out of the boat. But at the same time, when it's actually freezing outside, the water is warmer, and so it's warmer than than the air, so it helps heat up the boat a little bit too.
What about really bad weather? I think about that too.
Oh, that's the best part, actually.
Yeah.
You get that boat rocking in the weather and the wind and choppy waves or whatever, and it's the coolest feeling to be sitting on a boat and having it moving all around. And then you go to bed and it's like you're being rocked to sleep, like when you're a baby.
What body of water is this that you're on?
So my sailboat is on Puget Sound, which is saltwater, and then my boat I'm living on is in Lake Union, which is freshwater.
All right. Very cool.
Yeah, the only back to a rocky boat is sometimes you get on land and you think the land is moving too. Move around for a little bit.
Wow.
Do you find yourself calling other people land lovers and stuff like that, using pirate jargon? Because I would. That would be my excuse to say that kind of stuff all the time.
Arr!
So a buddy of mine that I've actually been friends with since I was 5 years old, he's the one I stole the boat from. He actually bought a boat, and we live next to each other now in the same marina. And we've actually been getting more and more nautical terms in our vocabulary, and we've been calling people landlubbers a little bit too. And if somebody doesn't understand something, like on a boat, a rope is not a rope. A rope is a line. But if a friend's visiting, you might call it a rope, and then kind of look disdainfully at them a little bit, be like, it's a line, okay. But I'll call it a rope so you understand what I'm talking about.
That's
That's so funny. They could be like pretentious about this. I love that.
Let's go over on the right side of the boat. Starboard.
It's not right, guys.
Starboard. Idiot.
Wow. Okay. So we've got we've come to about just about the end of our time, and we've got to wrap up with just a couple final quick questions, the last things that we want to know. So I'll just hit you with a couple more. Do you have any, or this question I like to ask is, who in the WordPress community inspires you, and also at the same time, who do you think might be a good person to invite to be a guest on the show in the future?
Okay, well, I mentioned Zach Tolman earlier as the caching god. Zach Tolman is one of the most brilliant people in the WordPress community, in my opinion. he has helped me out so many times on various things. Amazing with Git, amazing with caching, amazing with programming, amazing human being. And he's a real quiet, soft-spoken guy. But then you put him on stage, and he is one of the most dynamic speakers that exists. If you guys haven't had him on yet, do it. He will. I mean, you'll have fun. It won't be boring like me, and I promise. He's taught me a lot. So, Kyle, you said that I've helped you out a lot. Zach Tolman has probably been one of the people that's helped me out the most in my trek through WordPress.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Zach's fantastic. He's blown my mind more than a couple of times with what he does. So yeah, thank you for that recommendation. We will definitely make sure that happens. You can count on it. Regarding the future opportunities to bump into Ben in person, on land or at sea, how might somebody potentially do that?
Well, I don't have any WordCamps on my schedule that are planned out yet, so I can't tell you which WordCamps I'm going to be at for the next cycle of WordCamp season. But if you're in Seattle, I would love to have you come hang out, take you sailing, take you out for a drink, do whatever. Come see my home. I'd love that. And just ping me on Twitter or on Skype or on IRC or in Slack or the other bajillion ways that we have of communicating with each other. And then the local WordPress meetups. That's always a good place. I'm not the best at attending all of them, but I do enjoy the community there. So that's the best way to get a hold of me. And you could always Skype me if you want to see my face.
Yeah, that's great. So, is there anything that we failed to talk about that maybe we neglected or we should have mentioned?
Oh man, I don't know. The world is amazing, right? Everything is awesome.
Lego movie.
Lego movie. Everything is awesome.
You've got a dog too, don't you?
I do. Yeah, if any of you follow me on Twitter, you know all about my dog because I tweet about her all the time. She's a beautiful boxer named Bella, which I know every dog's named Bella, but that was her name when I got her. So.
That's great. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up for us today. It was a real treat to have you on, Ben. I learned a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't know about you, and I think the world is thanking us for presenting more Ben Lobaugh. So thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for coming. It was great.
I really look forward to bumping into you again and hanging out. And my business partner is really telling me that we went to San Francisco for this WordCamp. He says next we need to go to Seattle.
Oh man, I tell you what, if you think San Francisco is good, Seattle blows it out of the water. Best word.
I've heard great things, and my business partner really likes Seattle, so it could be in the cards for us. And you better bet that we'll be saying hello when we come in town.
Great, let's go for a sail.
Oh, yeah, all right. We'll make that happen. All right. So, thank you very much, Ben. You are awesome, and we are grateful you were. Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you a lot, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
We will see you later.